Here we go. Here we go. We are live on Twitter X. Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Kurt Leavins. Welcome, Kurt.
Hey, Dave, ready to rock and roll in round 3.
It's got a nice ring to it. Certainly better than how fans are feeling right now in Vegas, Toronto, just to name a few, Winnipeg, few cities. Massive disappointment in those cities. And man, is it getting ugly in Toronto. I don't know if this is true, but I heard it was discussed on on the Ray and Dregs podcast today. Apparently some a-hole published Mitch Marner's address, home address on Twitter today, on X. And I just think that is the most despicable, counterproductive, and dangerous thing a fan can do, and unforgivable. I honestly think I don't know if there's criminal charges, but you're putting someone in danger because there's nutty people out there. And if you do something like that, I just think that's just beyond the pale. So
yeah,
hated to see that.
Yeah, I am with you on that. I had a hard time cheering for the Leafs in that series, even though they were a Canadian team. But you know what? And I think I've said this to you before. It has nothing to do with the Leafs players, right? It is the over-rabid media and over-rabid fans in that market. And hey, Edmonton's got some of those too, but not to the extent of that tire fire. Like, good luck with all that, Toronto. Like, good God.
I have to give the Toronto media credit. There's some members of the Toronto media who can read minds. They can look at a picture of Connor McDavid and sense, they can read his thoughts and think, he's coming to Toronto. He's not happy in Edmonton.
Yeah.
And Connor McDavid's not going to put up with Edmonton much longer. One of them had that thought and broadcast that to the world. So it is impressive, that ability to read
Leafs
people's
would be a whole lot better. Laugh out loud.
I like a lot of their fans. I've gotten to know a lot of their fans on Twitter X. They're great fans, a lot of them. But man, there's been a really nasty side come out in the fans about especially Mitch Marner in the last little while. And some of the media there is just like, they never give the Oilers their due. They never pick the Oilers to win a series. Like it's just so predictable. Some of them aren't going to pick the Oilers to win a series, which is like whatever. Like it's just fuel for the fire for Connor McDavid and the players if they pay any attention to that kind of stuff at all, which they probably don't. But I was cheering for them. I was even watching it now and then. Man, I just thought, like, even when they won Game 6, Kurt, as I was watching the game, I saw Toronto give up odd man rushes in the third period. And I thought, this team, it doesn't know yet. It hasn't yet learned how to play defensive hockey. And in the last minute of that game, protecting Lee Matthews coughed the puck up into the slot. And it's just like, what? What are you doing? Yeah. Like, how can that happen? So I don't know. I've seen enough bad defensive play by highly talented Oilers players over the years to recognize that malady. If they don't cure it, they will never win. It's just like the Oilers. If the Oilers never cured that, and they did to a large extent last year especially, they would never win. And they won't win this year if they revert to some of their bad habits. And I know McDavid got quite irate last series when he was asked about the strong defensive play, but it's a fair question. It's a fair question to him and all those players. They might not like to hear it. Good. I'm glad they don't like to hear it, but they need to hear it, and they do. And they are, but best of all, they're doing it. Like they do have come through defensively in about half the playoff games.
Well, when Toronto lost that Game 7 near the end of the game, the message I put out on social media was, "These dogs don't hunt."
I saw that.
And it's just,
what
what?
Do you mean?
Yeah, they don't, as a team, they don't have the capability the way they are constructed right now to dig deep and win a playoff series. There's a famous old saying by Duke Snider, who used to be the color man for the Montreal Expos, who said, "These guys don't have any hair on their ass," which which was a way of saying, you know what, they just aren't willing to do what it takes to win, and that's the problem I see with the Leafs roster, is that too many of their players aren't willing to do what it takes to win. Um, and you know what, when you've won as many playoff series as the Buffalo Sabres, who haven't been in the postseason for the last 14 years, it's time you take a real hard look at the makeup of that organization and its players and make some changes now.
Well, this is an organization that decided to not prioritize keeping Zach Hyman around. It is an organization that didn't keep Connor Brown around. It's an organization that didn't keep Nazem Kadri around. And it's an organization that was too good and too high-minded to enter into the Evander Kane sweepstakes when Kane was up.
I remember that.
You know, though that comes back to bite you. If you're not willing to take a chance on certain kinds of players, and if you don't value the aggression that certain kinds of players bring, that is not a recipe for playoff success, I'm going to suggest. And they didn't have, like, whatever you want to say about Matthews and Marner, they need two or three more of those guys in their forward group and defense group to win. They did a good job bringing in Tanev, but they need more of that kind of player, and they need to prioritize it. They need to make it a focus, and it just wasn't. It was, it was all about, let's bring in more passing defensemen who can pass the puck, and little forwards who can, let's draft small forwards who can develop into, Sebastian Aho, and let's, all these kind of innovative ideas. Well, they didn't, in the end, they didn't work to build a core group of players to support Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner and Nylander, who are all fantastic skill hockey players. So that's tough for the fans there. Like I'm sure lots of them recognize exactly what we're saying. This isn't news to them, but it must really bug this snot out of them.
I did feel bad to see the jerseys on the ice, because we went through that in Edmonton, and I don't care what franchise you cheer for. I think that's a bridge too far, and I felt bad. I felt bad for the players. I felt bad for the majority of fans, because when I see jerseys, the jerseys don't belong to the players, right? The jersey belongs to the team. That's why I've always disagreed with the throwing of jerseys on the ice. You're not protesting the players. Yeah, that's not how you do it. And I disagreed with it when it happened in Edmonton. I disagree with it when it happens in Toronto. I think it's below them as a franchise. And I choose to believe that those few that did it don't represent the large majority of fans in Toronto.
We got some upset fans here too in Edmonton, Kurt.
That's what I hear.
So
I've been a bit off the air for the last day. Fill me in.
Sportsnet announced its announcers for round 3, and Gene Principe is going to be the game host.
Good for Gene.
But he's the only one who moved on from the crew. The Jack Michaels, Louis DeBrusque weren't picked. Instead, they picked Chris Cuthbert and Craig Simpson. And people are irate. They are absolutely, and not in small numbers, in huge numbers. And it's these big Toronto Sportsnet is screwing Edmonton, picking the Maple Leafs announcers. I would prefer, my preference would be to have Jack Michaels and Louis DeBrusque do this. I think this playoffs in particular, I think Jack Michaels has taken his announcing game up a notch. And I compare him to like a Glenn Anderson kind of hockey player. In the regular season, his mind might wander a little bit during games, Jack. He might start talking about the movies a little bit too much, or something not related to the play. This is the truth, and everybody knows it. But there's no one better in the playoffs in a big moment than Jack Michaels right now. He is the big moment announcer of hockey. The intensity, the passion, the vocabulary, the description, the surprising little turns of phrase that he'll throw out there. Jack raises his game in the playoffs, and he's gotten that chance to bring us his A+ game. He's risen to the occasion. He is fantastic in big moments. There's nobody better. And it's very frustrating, I think, for Oiler fans that knowing they won't have that voice. Now, Jack says you can always listen to me on the radio, so some people will Some people will do that. So the only other comment I would make is this: you can really like Jack and Louie and the work they do, and be disappointed in Sportsnet without having to attack Chris Cuthbert and Craig Simpson.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
the aspect of this that I haven't liked is Chris Cuthbert is a fantastic play-by-play announcer, and he will be recognized. He will be recognized when it's by the time it's all over. He's going to be up there with the Bob Coles and the Danny Gallavans. He's strong, focused, professional, excited by the game, interested in the game, does a great job. And Craig Simpson, I mean, he was a great Oilers player. He's always been a very astute analyst. Like my two favorite analysts are Ferraro and Bieksa. I think they're at a different level than all the other guys. But I really like Craig Simpson's work. So I just think maybe be upset, be mad. But if you can find it in yourself to lay off those two, like unless you really don't like them, then say your piece. Just like the fan who throws his sweater on the ice. I don't do it. You can be a fan however you want to be a fan. I'm not going to be offended by unless you publish someone's name at home address on the internet. That's where I draw the line.
That's the bridge
I
too
have a
far for
very
Dave.
far line.
Yeah.
You can throw your sweater. You can criticize Jack, Louie, Chris Cuthbert, Simpson. All of that is okay. But I just think within this discussion, I think there's room to be upset with the decision without necessarily going there unless you really strongly feel it about Cuthbert and Simpson.
Yeah. Well,
What's
look,
your take?
well, I have a few things. And first of all, of course, it's okay if Oiler fans are disappointed that Jack and Louie aren't doing this series. They're perfectly well within their rights to be disappointed. No one will accuse me of not being on the Jack Michaels fan club. I'm among Jack's biggest boosters. I think he's one of the premier play callers in the league, and his talent probably transcends hockey, and probably someday I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jack doing things like basketball and football, because he has those skills. He has those bring you out of your seat skills, right? He can make a game seem bigger than it is, but he can also appropriately rise to the occasion in big moments. He is a blue chip play-by-play man, and I would encourage people to tune in to Jack on radio, because in my opinion, Jack's even better on radio, where he doesn't have the visuals, and it's all up to Jack to paint the picture, and he is brilliant at that. So I get people unhappy that Jack and Louie aren't there. I want to reiterate part of what you said. Look, Chris Cuthbert is at or near the top of the game when it comes to hockey play-by-play globally. He is one of the best. And in my opinion, I think Craig Simpson is the best NHL color man in the league. You mentioned Bieksa, but he's not a color guy. He just sits on a panel. Anybody can do that. It's way tougher to be picking up cues and doing color to someone's play-by-play. And I think Simpson is brilliant. And he has such a long and colorful Oilers history as well. Oilers fans should feel comfortable that their team is being represented, if that's kind of what you're interested in. The thing I would encourage fans to keep in mind is that, one, Chris Cuthbert worked his entire career to become the number one man at Hockey Night in Canada. This is something he spent his career doing, right? So he's earned this. Like he bounced around a little bit. He rode side saddle to Bob Cole for a lot of years, when Bob, as much as I loved and idolized Bob Cole, Bob was well past his prime. And Chris respectively bided his time and waited, and then I thought rightfully ascended to the crown of calling play-by-play in Canadian hockey. The other thing fans, I would encourage them to keep in mind, is that Chris Cuthbert is almost certainly contracted to do the Stanley Cup Finals. In other words, this was decided in August, not in May, right? When you sign a talent contract with Sportsnet and Rogers Hockey Night in Canada, those are the sorts of things that you lay down in ink. This isn't like NHL referees who, if you have a bad second round, you don't ref the third round. This is stuff that is decided not just the summer before, but when they sign their original contract to do the broadcasts. It will be stipulated Mr. Cuthbert will do the Stanley Cup Finals. So people are even making the assumption that Sportsnet's making this decision. And I've been around professional broadcasting and professional sport long enough to know that this decision was probably made not months ago, but years ago, and there was no decision to be made in this case.
So, Kurt, just in case people don't know, could you just briefly outline your day job because you have some expertise in this area?
Yeah, you know what? I've been in broadcasting for 38 years. Worked for two companies, including my present company, which is Pattison Media. I have been on NHL broadcast teams in Toronto, in Calgary. I've covered the Oilers in Edmonton, and I'm a national consultant. Broadcasting consultant, work in radio and television, and this is the cult of hockey is the most fun I have in my day, but but it isn't what pays my mortgage. I'm a broadcasting consultant. I'm a programming expert. This is what I do for a living. I've signed these contracts with talent, right? So I've seen the wording, I've seen the verbiage, I've been through this, so I have a fairly solid idea of what's going on here. So. Blah blah blah. I'm sure people didn't come here to hear about me, but that's me.
Well, I just wanted to, that they know that you know what you're talking about.
On good days, Dave.
In terms of this aspect, radio contracts and radio performance and broadcast performance, Kurt, I was wondering one thing. Would it be possible for them to have Cuthbert on the national broadcast, but to carve out Alberta for Michaels and DeBrusk on a broadcast? Would that cost too much? Would it be too technically difficult to do so? Is there a reason that they couldn't satisfy both the local market and the national market? Because I'm guessing that people nationally would like to see Cuthbert and Simpson, but Albertans would feel otherwise. So is there any chance they could do that or not?
Well, a couple things. One, it also makes sense that Cuthbert isn't calling the other series in the Eastern Conference because, of course, Cuthbert would call the Canadian team that's left in the playoffs. That seems pretty natural, right? I mean, I think most people would understand that. Keep in mind, regional broadcasts are over as soon as the playoffs begin.
Yes.
Right. That's a separate broadcasting contract that has no bearing on the Stanley Cup playoffs whatsoever.
So you think this is just contractually set in stone and there'd be no changing? I think he gets his pick and.
I think agents and lawyers decided this. And could they technically, David? Yeah, they could. But I think contractually there's no way. That's my educated guess.
Okay. Kurt, let's move along to the series upcoming, the Dallas Stars versus the Edmonton Oilers.
All right.
And as fraught, like we both picked the Oilers in 7 last time, so we both saw a very difficult road ahead for the Oilers. It turned out it wasn't as dire as we had predicted. I have the same feeling going into this one. Really tough series, really close, two very close teams, two excellent teams. I feel about this certainly I felt about it the last 8 teams. But certainly the last 4, all worthy of the Stanley Cup, all great hockey teams. The 4 best teams in the NHL got through. This is them, and these are gonna be heavyweight battles. And I'm worried about this series. But I am picking the Oilers. You picked them in 6, correct?
6, I did. Yep.
I'll pick them in 7. Again, because I just see this series. It's so close, and I see potential for Dallas to win some games here and really threaten the Oilers. Like I'm just hoping the Oilers get off to a good start like they did against Vegas. Getting that first game, I mean they won the first 2. That was just amazing. So fingers crossed here, and it often comes down to puck luck. Or a save here or a save there. It's just so close in these games, and you just I'm more worried, Kurt, about this series than about the upcoming final against Florida or Carolina. I think Dallas is other than the Oilers. I think the Oilers are the best team left, but Dallas is the second best team. And so that's my take on it. How do you see it, just generally?
Yeah, well, my thoughts kind of dovetail from yours. I do think that Dallas will be the best team that the Oilers have faced in the playoff to date. I do think the Dallas Stars are better than both the biggest Golden Knights and the LA Kings. So I think it is the toughest test for the Oilers. But on the other hand, I think the Oilers are playing their best hockey of this season. I could argue they're playing the best hockey very recently of their last 2 seasons. Because their play over the last half dozen games has been as good as I remember these guys ever playing in terms of two-way hockey. And I think it's going to take a superlative two-way effort to beat Dallas. I'm with you. I think this will be a war. But I do think if Edmonton can get into Dallas and split, that will turn the series. I think it's critical that they split. And if they do, I don't care if they win the first or the second game. I think that can be the ticket to winning the series.
It's interesting what you say about them playing so well right now, because I agree with that. And it's interesting because last year when they made the run through the playoffs, they didn't. There was so many moments when they didn't look like a team that was going to win the Stanley Cup against Vancouver. Like the goaltending was just terrible at times. And then they get down 3-0 to Florida, and again it was the Florida goalie standing on his head. But it was just kind of a non-traditional playoff run where they were always coming from behind in games, and it didn't seem like Oilers teams that have won the Cup in the past. The way they're winning now and playing now, this reminds me of a Stanley Cup winning team.
Yeah.
This reminds me of how it feels to watch a team which is going to win the Stanley Cup, because they are just so freaking good.
Yeah, know what? I want to pick up on what you said, because last season I really thought that their PK played out of its mind. Like all world, like the greatest PK in the history of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I think, honestly, it covered up some warts in the Oilers game. And I think we're seeing a better all-around performance from the Oilers, particularly over the last half dozen games than we saw all of last season.
Let's get into, Kurt, our two good things, two bad things notion, where we're going to talk about two good things, two reasons each why we think the Oilers will win the series, and then one thing each why we think that Dallas might trip up our expectations and have the Dallas Stars win the series. And then we'll pick one player each who we think is a dark horse candidate to be a real difference maker in the series. And I think last time you picked Connor Brown, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I picked John Klingberg. So we
two pretty good picks as it turned out, right? Yeah.
Although there was lots of good picks
there were
against Vegas, as it turns out. All right. So what's your first reason for thinking that the Oilers are going to win this sucker?
I think a key to them winning, and I think a real opportunity for them to potentially take advantage of in order to win, will be to take advantage of Dallas's blue line. In particular, their drop-off halfway through their defense core. I think arguably Dallas has the better top three defensemen in the series. If you look at Heiskanen, if you look at Harley, if you look at Lindell, three terrific defensemen, right? But I think Dallas is going to have to play their top pair, which is probably going to be Harley and Heiskanen. They're probably going to have to play them 25 minutes a night to beat the Oilers. And I think the Oilers can get to Dallas's third pairing. I'm not buying the people who are talking crap about Cody Ceci again. As you know, when Cody Ceci was in Edmonton, I thought people underrated him, and I think they're still underrating him in Dallas today. But when I look at Dallas's third pairing, if you can get matchups against guys like Bichel and Petrovich and Lyubushkin, you can beat those guys. As it was in the last series against Winnipeg, those guys are only playing 9-10 minutes a night. And I think we can agree that Winnipeg does not have the high-end attackers that Edmonton does. So I think for the Oilers to have a real chance to win this series, they have to get to that Dallas third pairing. Now, there's a lot of factors that will go into getting to that pairing, including physicality, and that's something that we'll talk about as this podcast goes along. But of the very precious few weaknesses I see Dallas having, that third pairing defensive alignment is one that I think the Oilers can take advantage of.
So they got Cece, Labushkin, Petrovic, and Leon Bichelle, who is he's 21, I think, and is a monster, huge kid, and looks like he's going to be a top four defenseman possibly in this league for some time when he really develops. He's a scary player because he can move, and he's just massive. CC. So Petrovic is interesting because he was also with the Oilers like in 28, like in the
briefly, yes,
Decade of Darkness Plus, and wasn't good. He only played like 9 games and just didn't cut it. And CC was still good last year. He was a solid defenseman for the Oilers.
Yep.
But he and Labushkin, he's kind of up and down. He's been up and down with a lot of teams. So you'd think maybe that's something the Oilers can take advantage of, Kurt. That's a real possibility. I'm going to go with Edmonton's physicality, Kurt, as a reason that they could win this game. And let me just call up the stats on this because it's a little bit easier to make that argument. But Dallas isn't, I'll first go to the teams. Dallas is not a huge hitting team itself.
No.
They weren't in the regular season. I think with Edmonton in the regular season, they were both like right near the bottom for hits per 60.
Yep. Neither were in the top 25. You're right.
Yeah, I think they were 1 and 2 right at the bottom. And I remember last year being kind of relieved because Vancouver and LA were hard hitting teams last year. The Oilers needed a break from that, and they did get that a little bit. So far in the playoffs, the top hitting team has been Florida, 46 hits a game. Edmonton is 10th out of 16 playoff teams, 36 hits a game. So that's 10th. Florida's at 46, Edmonton's at 36, and Dallas right at the bottom with 30. So 6 hits a game difference there. The Oilers have a group of forwards who, if you're going to rely on a couple defensemen, that might not work out so well. And if you have defensemen who can't handle the puck really well, CC, Labushkin, and Petrovic might be in that category, and maybe Bichelle at this point. McDavid gets in fast forechecks. Draisaitl gets in fast and forechecks. Hyman is a hitting machine. Like by an order of magnitude, he's raised his hitting in these playoffs. He is just punishing the top defensemen on other teams. And then there's Evander Kane who his great delight in life is to make it miserable for opposing defensemen by hearing his footsteps as he comes in like a refrigerator to flatten them against the boards. Corey Perry is aggressive. Connor Brown's aggressive. Podkolzin hits like a mini fridge. Henrique is aggressive. Janmark is aggressive. Trent Frederick really loves to hit. So he's in the Podkolzin category of throwing his weight around. So there's like 3 guys, Hyman, Kane, Podkolzin, and Frederick, who just are just looking for it all the time. This is a huge thing for the Oilers. And because they're going to have I think it's a week off between games. Did they finish, was it Wednesday? Or was it Tuesday even?
The days are running into one another on me now, David.
I hear you.
But it's been a gap. It's been a gap for sure.
Let's say about a week.
Yeah.
That's for me the two things. The Oilers win the cup if they stay healthy and they play solid defensive hockey, championship defense, and they're fully capable of playing defense like that. They've shown it. Can they stay healthy? That's more of a wild card, but it sure helps beating Vegas in 5. Mm-hmm. And so this team, Connor McDavid, for instance, went hard into the boards on a back check. But now he's got a whole week to get over that. That's huge in the playoffs. Like this kind of break in the playoffs that the Oilers just got. So I think Dallas is going to be facing a really difficult physical hockey team. Um, it's not so much with the defensemen. They're more a group of puck movers, although Nurse hits and,
Yeah, Nurse has been very physical this playoffs. So,
Nurse hits and Ekholm, if he does get in, he hits. But it's the forwards that on the forecheck, it can just, it starts raining on you when the Oilers play. It's a downpour and you just want to take cover after a while. I think it's very intense and it's an added element. It's the new thing in a way. They already were playing championship defense last year in the playoffs, but this is the new thing, is this incredible, unrelenting physicality from the forwards.
well, two things. One, I was talking about that third pairing from Dallas. They aren't puck movers, and so I think Edmonton's more aggressive forecheck can be a difference maker. So that's what I was alluding to when I was talking about that bottom pairing for Dallas. So I'm glad you brought the physicality up. The other thing, and it's too bad our old friend Bruce wasn't here to talk about this, because does this not remind you of Dallas Edmonton playoff series pre-Decade of Darkness? There's obvious differences. We've got Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl now, but going to those series as well, the one advantage that the Oilers had was that they could bring physicality. Now, Dallas were tough as nails too. Those things were battle royales. But the Oilers, that was really the last time that the Oilers were a real physical menace. Now, as you said, as you outlined their forward lines, they can put a wrecking ball on each of their four forward lines. And as we saw from Chris Knobloch, he tends to roll four lines now. So, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think physicality could certainly be a difference maker.
All right, Kurt, what's your second reason for the Oilers winning this series?
My reasons why they'll win this series are going to get narrower because, like you, I think this is going to be a real battle and a real tight series. But I do think the thing that has gotten the Oilers this far, their depth, is what can get them to the Stanley Cup final. People in Dallas were going on about how 12 different Dallas Stars had scored in the playoffs. Well, 14 different Edmonton Oilers have scored in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So arguably, the Oilers have a narrow edge there. If you think that Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid aren't going to outplay Rupe Hintz and the big guy that they went and got in the regular season, okay. But I think if the big guys saw off at the top of the lineup, I think it'll come down to the second and third lines that'll make the difference. And so the lines that I'll be watching will be Henrique, Kane, Brown against Johnson, Marchand, and Robertson. I think those two third lines may end up, and it may just be a goal, right, that decides this series. It could be that narrow, but I think it's going to come down to that. And the Oilers do have a real third line of real NHL players with real Stanley Cup playoff experience. And two of them, Evander Kane and Connor Brown, have reputations of coming up big in playoff series. And so I give the Oilers a very narrow edge. And as I mentioned before, along with Chris Knobloch's proclivity to roll four lines because he's got four NHL lines that he can use.
It's a little scary, because Dallas, Jason Robertson's coming back from injury. He's a fantastic shooter and goal scorer.
Normally,
he doesn't have any goals in 6 games normally. So
he hasn't been good.
Mason Marchment, 1 goal. Evgeny Dadonov, 1 goal. Jamie Benn, 1 goal. Tyler Seguin, 2 goals. These are all guys who can score. These are all strong, attacking hockey players. What about Matt Duchene? Does he have none? I'm just trying to find him.
Has no goals. He's got a few assists, but I saw somebody out there, David.
All of these...
I saw somebody out there who they were comparing, and this was somebody from Dallas. They were comparing rosters, and they picked him over Leon Draisaitl at 2C. Are you on crack?
No,
I'm sorry.
I hope these players are as. I hope. Yeah, I saw that too. Because they're big names. Like Matt Duchene is a big name hockey player.
Sure.
So is Tyler Seguin, and so is Jamie Benn.
Jamie Benn, yeah.
And so is Robertson. I just hope that their performance is indicative of their actual process and play in these, because it's not looking good. Like the Oilers have The Oilers have 11 players who have scored 2 or more goals. The Dallas has 6. So this speaks to what you're talking about, Kurt. But we don't know, and until I see it up against the Oilers, you just don't know how this is going to play out. Because now you think, well, if the Oilers can shut down the top line, good chance they can win this series. But maybe these other lines are going to crank it up and really get going. But I agree with you. The Oilers' depth at this point looks superior, and my next reason for them winning is essentially both defensive depth and defensive coherence. The Oilers have missed probably their best two-way defenseman when he's healthy.
Yep.
Matthias Ekholm, and he hasn't been healthy since February 1st. He's been either sick or injured or both. And he played about a dozen games in that time, and he was really bad. He was not very good at all. And then he finally just shut it down because he couldn't get going. But before then, he was playing at the same high level that he's played ever since he got to Edmonton. He was really good this season. So it's not like this is a player who's lost it as an NHLer, which sometimes it's just someone who got injured this year and then lost it because of that.
Yep.
So without him, they shut out Vegas 2 games in a row. And they did it because they took away almost all of the most dangerous 5-alarm chances. Usually the Oilers in the regular season gave up 7 such 5-alarm chances per game, the 33 percenters. Against Vegas, they gave up 3 in the last 2 games, 3 each game. That is championship defense. And they did it with Wallman, Klingberg, essentially 3 equal pairings. Wallman, Klingberg, Nurse Stetcher, and Bouchard Kulak.
3 of the 6 who didn't play the last few games of the regular season.
Yeah. And they also did it. So I think there's 2 key moves of the playoffs for the Oilers to me. And, maybe 3. The decision to go with Pickard obviously was huge against the Kings.
Agree.
But the decision to put Evan Bouchard, and I want to throw out a shout out to Darcy Woodguy and McLeod for, it had been talked about how strong Bouchard had been on the PK. Darcy pointed it out as a key moment actually in the playoffs. And it really was, because Wallman was getting eaten alive on his wrong side on the PK, and Bouchard went in there, and because he is a big rangy guy, and interestingly, defensive hockey in the shorthanded situation is less physical than even strength.
Yes.
You don't often hit. It's all about reading the play and covering a zone of the ice and having big reach and being able, when you get the puck on your stick, being able to make a good play with it, clear it. Evan Bouchard happens to be really good at all those things. It was brilliant. Like, to me, that actually might be the most, because the Oilers were starting to get hammered on the PK against LA. They put Bouchard out there and it essentially solved the problem. That is great coaching. And the other one was bringing Stetcher in for Emberson. A little less great coaching, because every Tom, Dick, and Harry Oilers fan, including me and you, were calling for that to happen for a long time. For 2 in a playoff, if you're calling for it 2 or 3 games, that's a long time in the playoffs when it's that obvious. And Coffey didn't do it, and the Oilers paid a price. They were falling apart defensively. They made that change, and this defensive group, Kurt, this is, again, when I think of the Oilers teams that win Stanley Cups, it's like they have 3 solid defense pairings. Right until the end, right? Like in the last year, I think it was, I won't be able to get them all. I think it was Steve Smith, they had Kevin Lowe and Craig Muni as one pairing. Charlie Huddy and Steve Smith and Reijo Ruotsalainen and Randy Gregg. 3 excellent defense pairings. You need that to win the Stanley Cup. And, you need it more, even more now. And the Oilers finally got it. Stetcher came in there and played the best hockey of his Oilers career. He played he's finally getting healthy, although I guess he took a puck in practice.
Yeah.
At
2
least
days it was in the face.
Got it right in the nose and the teeth. It was terrible. Bob Stauffer was saying you might have to wear a bubble next time he plays. Anyway, Stetcher was just, he reminded me of the young Troy Stetcher I'd seen in Vancouver. Just this, like, where did they find this guy? He's so fast. He's good with the puck. He's smart. He battles hard. He did all those things with Darnell Nurse, and it was it solved a huge issue for the Oilers. They were coherent, efficient, successful performance-wise against Vegas, and they shut down Vegas. So that's a championship defense. That's what it looks like. And this is without Matthias Ekholm.
Yeah.
This is what if Matthias Ekholm is healthy, ready to come in and bring his A game, by all means. But they're already really good. And it's good though that Ekholm might come back because they're not deep. Injuries happen to defensemen often, so that could be huge that Ekholm's ready. In Stauffer was saying in about 10 days, by game 5 or 6, and game 5 is 10 days from now. So yeah, these guys are getting it done.
Yeah. Well, a few things on that. I agree. I would argue that there is less difference between 1 and 6 on the Oilers' blue line than 1 and 6 on Dallas's blue line. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
You know, and I
think that huge.
Yeah, and I think Dallas has the best pair. But as soon as you get past the first pair, it starts to swing. And so I think overall, the Oilers do have the better blue line in this series. And as I said, Heiskanen is going to have to, and his partner Hartley are going to have to play 25 minutes a night. And we'll see against those wrecking balls that are on the Oilers' wings how they make out with that. With Stetcher, I know Bob's saying when he thinks that Matthias Ekholm may play. I'm here to tell you, as soon as Matthias Ekholm is cleared, he's going in. And I think that will be a series difference maker for the Oilers when he does. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's as soon as game 3 in Edmonton.
I'm just glad there's no pressure.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll you know what? I was glad to hear you say I was glad to hear what you said about injuries, because look, if in game 2, someone, God forbid, gets hurt, we'll just bring in Matthias Ekholm, right? You never want to see anybody get hurt, but you're right. That's depth, right? The other thing I wanted to say, going back to your PK point, everybody, me included, spent so much time picking apart elements of Evan Bouchard's game. But I think the one thing that I need to be clear about, at no point did I ever say that Evan Bouchard wasn't a smart player. Right? He knows how to run a power play, which takes hockey IQ, it takes intelligence. And if you're killing a penalty, when you understand intrinsically how a power play works, that's a big advantage. Evan Bouchard knows where everybody is and where the puck's going to go. So that helps his intuition when he's defending. And your aforementioned point about his height and his long reach, all of that played into it. You can hack on Evan Bouchard all you like for his giveaways. God knows I do. But don't say he's not an intelligent player. He is. But intelligent players like him who play 25 minutes a night and have the puck a lot give the puck away a lot too. So I'm not surprised and really pleased to see how he picked up the Oilers' PK last series.
It's interesting. Bouchard was critical to one aspect of the game, but all these defensemen were, because they're all really good puck handlers. And I love this about this group of players.
All 6, yeah,
they
you're right.
all really can handle the puck.
Yep.
And it really is important it was really important against a team like Vegas that played zone, packs it in the zone. Because the way you beat a zone is and you might remember this from the series, there was moments where the Oilers were just firing the puck around constantly in the offensive end, one pass after another, right around the circle. Really quick passes, because the way that you beat a zone is with that quick passing. Get someone open for an outside shot, pound it at net, and then try to put in the rebound or make a cross-seam pass. That's how you beat zone. And the Oilers did it to a T. They were moving that puck, and Bouchard was the best at not firing the puck into shin pads, at holding off, shooting, at moving the puck quickly. But when the shot was there, he would take it. But not when it wasn't there. And generally speaking, they were all really good at that. Just keep moving that puck. And I think that really tired out the Vegas zone. They got worked by the Oilers' passing in the offensive end, by the Oilers' patience in the offensive end. And you know,
And the
McDavid,
Oilers' physicality in their end.
and certainly the physicality to win the pucks down low
Yeah.
and control them. And McDavid wasn't charging headlong into that zone. He wasn't, and neither was Draisaitl. They weren't constantly losing the puck by trying to take on 2 or 3 defensemen like they did the first time they played Vegas, and lost in 2023. They were stopping up, passing it back to the point. They were playing excellent team hockey and sacrificing their natural instinct to always drive the net to a different strategy that really paid off against Vegas. Now, I understand that Florida and Carolina are both man-to-man teams, but I'm not so sure about Dallas.
Dallas
I
plays
don't
more
remember.
they play more of a hybrid zone, but Dallas is
Yeah,
also a very good transition team, like Vegas was. So I don't see the Oilers having to adopt that much of a different tactic to oppose these guys. I think it's
yeah. The only
going to be a
difference
very
is
similar game from a tactic standpoint.
that's my memory too, Kurt. The only difference is Dallas is a more of a skill team and passes the puck better. And they both Vegas and Dallas defend with an incredible amount of discipline. Vegas is not a physical team, but is a kind of a high pass, high skill team, high puck possession team. They can be when they're playing their game. So,
Yeah.
but I agree, they're very similar to Vegas in other aspects.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of similarities from the previous 2 series that we saw, right? Because like Dallas had the 5th best defensive team in the regular season. Well, the Oilers in the first round beat LA, which was the 6th best in the league defensively, and then the next round they beat
Yeah.
Vegas, who was the 3rd best in the league defensively. So they're playing 3 really good defensive teams in a row. So they are used to facing stiff opposition.
Yeah, and I think LA was playing a zone or a hybrid too. Like they weren't playing man to man like
Yeah,
they had previously,
that's right.
and it
Finally.
generally worked for them. Okay, Kurt, let's go to our thing. Why do you think Dallas might upset our expectations and win this series? What will have happened if that comes to pass?
Yeah, well, the Oilers' power play's got to get going. Now, I have confidence it will get going. This has been a historically good power play, and Draisaitl and McDavid and Bouchard are all playing well, and Zach Hyman has really found another gear in the playoffs. So I have confidence. However, in the Vegas series, the Oilers' power play was 1 for 11. Right. Here's another number for you. So far in these playoffs, the Oilers don't have a single power play goal on the road. And of course, Dallas has home advantage in this series. Connor McDavid doesn't have a power play goal in these playoffs. And oh yeah, the Stars had the 4th best penalty killing percentage in the league in the regular season. So as good as the Oilers' power play was against LA in round 1, it sputtered big time against Vegas in series 2. If it sputters again against a better overall team in Dallas in series 3, I think that'll spell trouble.
So I wrote a post. The biggest weapon in recent years of the Oilers' power play has been Leon Draisaitl's executioner shot, as I call it, where he goes down to one knee, kind of lashes his whole upper body and stick at the net, see if he's going to chop the goalie's head off, and lashes that puck. It is a fearsome, deadly weapon. It goes in. We've been charting this. We've charted the kind of grade A shots that go in the net since 2019-20 at the Cult of Hockey. And we started charting it because of Draisaitl's high shooting percentage. We were trying to figure out, how does he score consistently 20% of his shots? Because hardly anyone else does that anymore in the NHL.
Right.
And it's this one weapon. When he launches a grade A, when he launches his harpoon, his one-timer on net, he scores 34% of the time. So he's in the last, since 2019-20, he's had 405 one-timers in total in 507 games, regular season and playoffs, and he scored a total of 137 goals.
Wow.
So 34%. There's something wrong with Leon right now, and you can see this in his inability to get off the one-timer shot. He's had in 11 games, in all those power plays, which is probably 20 to 30 power plays, I'm just guessing, 11 games, he's had one-timer power play shot on net. Just one. This is so last year in the playoffs, by comparison, he had 20 in 25 games, 21 timers on net in 25 games, and he scored 8 goals. This year he's had one-timer on net on the power play, and he's scored 1 goal on it. He scored that goal on that shot. And we can both remember times where he's missed the net and missed wide open nets on, like, not as bad as Mason Appleton of Winnipeg the other night. But there was one or two where I thought, oh man, he scores on that shot. Like, he always scores on that shot, and he didn't. And so I'm not sure what it is. I was speculating on what it could be in a recent post. I was saying, okay, the obvious thing, it could be injury. When an NHL player isn't executing, the most obvious thing is it could be lower body, it could be upper body. You just don't know. Something that's throwing off his delivery, because it's a complicated shot. It takes skill, agility, power, execution, like quickness. It is so fast. So you can see how something small could throw it off big time. Or it could be just natural variance, puck luck, bad shooting luck, just something that's not quite working yet. Now, I don't think it's that, because I think if it was, Leon would be on the ice until he corrected that at this point. Now, maybe we'll see that. He's had a week off. Maybe that's what it was. It was just like some kind of weird hitch in his swing, the yips on the one-timer. Who knows, however you want to put it. It could be that, because we're just looking at a small sample size of 11 games. And he had this season, Kurt, his rate of one-timer shots was right on his career, on his average in the last 6 years. It was right there, same. So this isn't a problem that we saw in the regular season where he regularly got off that one-timer. It's a problem that's come up in the playoffs. And I think it's crippling the Oilers' power play to some extent. Like, this is your main weapon, and your main guy, he's unable to execute right now. And it's now the third thing it could be is the other teams are just bending over backwards, sideways, upside down to take that away from the Oilers. But I think they've always been trying to do that. Are they suddenly more successful than in the past? It's possible that there was just really outstanding penalty killers on those Kings and VGK teams. But I don't think it's that. I think it's most likely injury, maybe combined with some bad puck luck. But the good thing is he's had a week off here. If it's injury and it's not that bad, like he was out, in the last month of the season, so injury's not that far-fetched either.
Yep, that's fair.
If he's healthy, could come back.
I'll mostly just play devil's advocate, because I generally see the same thing that you see, and the numbers don't lie. What I don't know is you're telling me he's getting fewer on net. My eye test agrees with your findings. What I don't know is, are his total opportunities down? In other words, are those cross seam passes getting through to him on the power play for them to, because if he has fewer opportunities, it's just like if you get one strike instead of 3, you're way less likely to hit a baseball, right? So I'm wondering if opportunities down, a lot of that has to do with pre-scout. Teams are just defending them better. We just talked about how
could be that
Dallas, LA, and Vegas are 3 of the best defensive teams in the entire league, right? So, and the other thing is, this time of year, it's frankly, you're not playing San Jose. It's these teams are way tougher in every element to beat, including the cross seam pass, including turning your back to him while he's standing on the goal line thinking, he can't score from there. And of course he can't. You may well be right. I'm not in the room. I don't know, but you're right. He did end up the season with a fairly long stretch not playing because of an injury. So who knows? But I'm with you. I'm hoping that the week off is what the doctor prescribed, and that howitzer comes back against Dallas.
Well, if it does, Kurt, that's huge for the Oilers.
Because
what we haven't seen in these playoffs yet is Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl take over significant periods of a series. We've seen them take over games and moments,
Yeah.
but they're playing a pretty responsible defensive game. Listen, if they figure out a way to start breaking down the other team consistently, which they've done in the past, like they've blown up teams,
Yeah.
and they can do that. And we haven't even talked about that as a possibility, but it's a possibility that could happen.
Yeah.
They make David and Draisaitl come alive, put their foot down, and just stomp. And the Dallas Stars are in the distant past very quickly. So if Leon gets that one-timer down and starts to get, let's watch the first couple power plays. Hopefully we won't be 2 or 3 games into the series before we see the Oilers' first couple power plays. But, and you might be right that he's getting less, that the other teams are taking it away more successfully than in the past. But in the playoffs, in the past, they haven't been able to take it away, and they've always played good teams. So, all right, my last year, I think Dallas had 13 power play chances against the Oilers. I was listening to a Dallas podcast today, and they mentioned 13 power plays against the Oilers and not 1 goal last year. And you talked about earlier how the PK of the Oilers last year took away a lot of warts on the team.
Yes.
And the other thing was Stuart Skinner surprised everybody, and especially as the series went along, he outplayed Jake Ottinger, which is a huge accomplishment. Last year he did that. So what if those things don't happen? What if the Stars power play gets hot or reasonably, scores at, let's say, 25%, and let's say Ottinger really outplays Skinner, and then Dallas could easily win this series. Like it's going to be close anyway. And if Ottinger, I think Skinner's going to be, I think the Oilers' defense is going to be really good. I'm getting very confident in that. But, and so I think Skinner's going to be okay to good. But what if Ottinger's great to brilliant? And we're facing that kind of thing. That can happen. That does happen. And he steals 2 games or 3 games even, like that would be a nightmare scenario. Like Bobrovsky did last year in the final. He stole at least 2 games. Maybe.
And the
3.
irony of that was is that Skinner had a higher save percentage in the Stanley Cup Finals than Bobrovsky did.
In the end.
In the end, right?
But the Oilers, yeah, and the Oilers did have significantly more grade A shots in Florida in the final series. And Bob just stole some games.
He did.
And he wasn't that great after that, but he was good enough in game 7. And they won. So I'm just worried about Ottinger coming up huge and about essentially the Dallas power play heating up and the Oilers PK again having a breakdown like we saw against LA in the first few games. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
It was horrendous.
Well, look, your reason why is related to my reason why, other reason why I thought the Oilers might not win, and it's related directly to Jake Ottinger. And I wrote about this in 9 Things on Sunday morning. I totally think that he can steal a series. He's that caliber of a goal. He's a top 5 goaltender in the NHL. In fact, I'd say he's a top 5 goaltender in the world right now, probably.
For sure. He definitely is.
Yeah. To your point about how he can be scary in a series, keep in mind in these playoffs so far, Jake Ottinger has not lost 2 games in a row.
Yeah.
Right. And after a loss, he's 5-0 with a save percentage of .929. So when he does lose, he comes back and plays great right after that, which is the sign of a great goaltender, right? A great goaltender like Grant Fuhr and all those other great goaltenders, Ken Dryden did, you'd seldom go on winning streaks because your goalie would steal you a game. Even when you still hadn't found your A game yet, he'd get you by, right? And Jake Ottinger has that ability to get you by. And so I do think he could be a huge reason why the Oilers don't advance to the Stanley Cup Finals this year. Now, I'll say 2 things about that, though. One, they've already beat him in this situation. The Oilers already know that they can get to Jake Ottinger and beat him and get to the Stanley Cup Final. They did that last year, right? So there's no mental block. The Oilers will have confidence that they can beat this guy as opposed to going up a goaltender who they never have any luck against. I don't want Jake Ottinger to get hurt. But let's say he does. Or let's say he stinks the joint out, which I think is highly unlikely. I think it's far more likely he maybe gets injured. There's where I think the Oilers have a huge advantage because by that time, Calvin Pickard will be, I'm made to understand Calvin Pickard's going to be able to be the backup again in a couple of games. Jake Ottinger is Dallas's goaltending. And I think Chris Knobloch would be perfectly comfortable with either one of his guys playing. And so while I'm worried about the Jake Ottinger thing, there's a silver lining kind of tucked in behind there.
Hopefully he'll be like the Jacob Markstrom, really great against other teams and not so great against the Oilers. Maybe the Oilers will just have his number. That happens sometimes too.
Right? And when you've beaten someone once, you feel infallible. You feel like you can just do it again and again.
Kurt, who's your wild card for having a big series?
My wild card, and I have one for each team. So my wild card for the Oilers is Matthias Ekholm.
All right.
I think Matthias Ekholm is closer than the Oilers are letting on. And I think there is no argument that he is the Oilers' best two-way defenseman. And as big as Heiskanen coming back into Dallas's lineup was for them, I think Matthias Ekholm would be for the Oilers. So I think that's the wild card on the Oilers side. On Dallas's side, and you mentioned him once, the one player on that team who I hate and respect is Jamie Benn. He is a younger Corey Perry. He's still got great hands. He's got all kinds of gamesmanship and physicality and leadership. Been through the wars, knows how to win. In a tough grind 'em out series, I'd be worried about Jamie Benn because while he's past his prime, he's still lots good enough to be a difference maker for a game or two in a series. And in a series this tight, that's all the difference you might need.
Yeah. I'm just looking down the Oilers lineup and I'm not really sure, like, if the player, like, I think Zach Hyman could have a big fight. Like, so let's say Zach Hyman's had a great playoffs physically, pounding guys, but he's got 3 goals in 11 games. I think this is could be the series where Zach Hyman starts to score. He's playing with McDavid. I think he might get the top power play again. I just think he's been a little better than Corey Perry. He's showing a bit more. And I think this could be like a goal a game kind of series for Zach Hyman, which we've seen in the past in the playoffs. I think he might get there again.
Well, he's due and playing his best hockey of the year, right?
I don't have a star, but I have a second Oiler. Trent Frederick hasn't been very good, I don't think, in the playoffs. He's struggled defensively, and he's been okay. He's been okay on the attack, but I think it's mainly due to injury. But he'll have had that week off, and he was coming on, getting better all the time, and that can be huge for a player. And if his health and his skating picks up, just let's say 10%, maybe he then adds 20% to his game and starts to become a real force for the Oilers.
That's a great.
So I'm going to go ahead.
That's a great pick because I had him written down too. So,
yeah. I think it could be him.
You know what
he hasn't done much yet. So.
No, but yeah, I think he's been effective, but not great, right? So it's we've gone through most of this podcast without talking about the 2 best players in the series, and you've heard this from me before. I think the team whose best players play better than the other team's best players is usually the team that wins. And at the end of the day, will Connor McDavid outplay Mikko Rantanen? And I think Mikko Rantanen is a fabulous hockey player. I don't mean to denigrate him in any way, shape, or form, but I do think he's a quarter rung below Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. To this point in his career, he has not been an MVP player. For the first time, he's the best player on his team. And so will he rise to the occasion this time? Or will Connor McDavid, having tasted the bitter defeat of Game 7 against Florida last year, be driven to the point where he takes on all comers and wins?
Yeah. I guess the only, McDavid, there's certain types of defensemen that give McDavid trouble. Defensemen who can really skate well. So we're talking about Cale Makar and Josh Morrissey, Even Dylan DeMello, like there's some defensemen who are just really good on their skates, and Heiskanen can be one of those guys.
He
So
can.
if he is
Yep.
Jacob Slavin, so if Heiskanen's really, really good, he could be, he's not really a dark horse player, but he could be their MVP, Heiskanen, in terms of having the ability, defending backwards to handle McDavid's speed,
Yep.
which is such a killer. And if he's able to do that, Dallas has a chance. It's probably in some ways other than the goaltending for Dallas, it's probably maybe the biggest factor for them is Heiskanen's ability to cover McDavid one-on-one. Because if he can't, they're in trouble.
Yeah. Great point.
He often has been able to, which is why He's a great player. So it's why Dallas has a real chance here.
And it's why I've been saying over and over again, they need Heiskanen to play 25 minutes a night. So he won't be fresh half the time he's facing McDavid. And McDavid doesn't need much of an advantage to take advantage.
All right, Kurt. Let's leave it there. Thanks for talking tonight.
Always a pleasure, David. Good to see you.
And in the meantime, and in between times, and until we meet again, Bruce McCurdy in the Hall of Our Fathers, hoisting a cold one with the hockey gourds. This has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.